So, believe it or not, guys, and I know this might be incredible to really even contemplate, to be honest, but there is more controversy in the FIA, all to do with our good friend Mohamed Ben Sulayem. The president of the FIA is embroiled in another steward sacking. Basically, there's another member of staff that has left, not of their own volition, and has really taken aim at the FIA president. Let me just read this, guys, out for you guys, because there's a few articles. Normally I've got one article. I got three here to go through, because for those that haven't been following what's been going on behind the scenes in the FIA, there is such a storm that is surrounding the president, really, and how he's running things, and people who have now, they might have officially left of their own volition, but they've actually come out and said they've been sacked, just like Niels Vittage said, the race director, or the former race director in Formula One. And now Tim Meyer is saying a similar thing as well, basically taking aim at MBS. So let's have a look at what's been said here, guys. Full article on Autosport. I don't think I've read an Autosport article in quite some time. And Ben Hunt's written it as well. A good guy, Ben. He used to work for a less than reputable newspaper, but he was always a good guy. I did enjoy meeting him, a couple times a few years ago. But yeah, let's have a look at what's been said here. So, sacked F1 race steward Tim Meyer has taken aim at FIA President Mohamed Ben Sulayem in a recent series of claims. Meyer, who was this week asked by Ben Sulayem, says the president directly involved himself in making his views known within the organisation. A stewards panel is assigned to each race and represents an independent body of officials to oversee the race. However, Meyer says that Ben Sulayem aired his views not with the stewards directly, but via his staff. Meyer also revealed that the controversial decision to punish drivers for swearing also came from the FIA president. Max Verstappen was hit with community service punishment for swearing at the Singapore Grand Prix, while Charles Leclerc was fined €10,000, half of which was suspended for swearing at the race in Mexico. Meyer told BBC Sport Ben Sulayem's view that the drivers need to be penalised for swearing, that is his view, and what has happened since reflects that. Meyer added, there are times when he has directly involved himself in making his views known, not with the stewards directly, but via his staff. Part of the job of the stewards is to enforce the FIA's policy on the rules. That's true. Technically, bad language is outlawed, so it's not unfair. Whether it's sensible we should be chasing drivers for it is a matter of mild swearing is another matter. I believe that's totally ridiculous, and I've made my views on that very clear a number of times in previous videos. I think the FIA has bigger problems than that. One of them being Ben Sulayem himself, but there we go. He's not going to go after himself, is he? Most drivers, English is their second, third, or fourth language, and every go-kart kid in the world, it's the first words they are taught in English. There are other ways to handle that kind of thing, unless you desire, is to flex your muscles, which kind of is for him, I will be honest. Meyer's accusation is extremely serious after Ben Sulayem was subjected to an internal investigation into the outcome of the 2023 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. A whistleblower had claimed that Ben Sulayem allegedly intervened to overturn a post-race penalty issued to Fernando Alonso, who had been handed a 10-second time penalty for having work done to his car while serving a 5-second penalty that he had received earlier in the race. Alonso, who was initially hit with a penalty for being out of position on the grid, had his car touched by a rear jack when he came in to serve his sanction. In March this year, a whistleblower claimed that Ben Sulayem called Sheikh Abdullah bin Hamid bin Isa Al Khalifa, the FIA's president for sport and for the Middle. I love how I do the name perfectly, but I trip over the sport for the Middle East and North Africa. I'm leaving that in the edit. I don't care. I did nail that name first time. I feel low-key proud of that. Who was at the race in an official capacity and made his thoughts known that the penalty should be dropped. The 10-second punishment was indeed rescinded, and Alonso was allowed to keep his third place. That's pretty serious. It's race fixing, and I covered this ages ago for the Chronicle. Actually, a written article I did way before we used to do videos this regularly. It's just terrible if this is true. It's race fixing. It's arguably up there with Crashgate in terms of how bad that is. But after a review by its own panel, the FIA said there was no evidence to support the accusation, and Ben Sulayem was cleared by the organisation's ethics committee. Which Yeah, I'm not going to comment on that, but I think you guys know where I stand on that. Maya, who worked for the organisation for 15 years, said he learned of his sacking via text message from one of Ben Sulayem's assistant on Tuesday. He said, for a federation that relies on volunteers, to fire by text someone who has made a significant contribution does not speak well of the management of the federation. Speaking about the reasons for his dismissal, Maya believed it was because Ben Sulayem took offence following an appeal by the Circuit of the Americas COTA chief following a track invasion by fans. Maya oversaw the right of review for the organisers of the United States Grand Prix after they were fined €500,000 with €350,000 suspended following spectators running onto the track in the race in October. Maya was working in his other roles as a sporting organiser and has been trying to get the official punishment reworded to remove any suggestions of negligence on COTA's behalf. He was immediately struck off the stewards panel for the Brazilian Grand Prix before being fired the next week, citing how Ben Sulayem felt the appeal was a personal attack. Maya said the official reason that was given is that they felt there was a conflict of interest with the FIA as I had the right of review in my role as organiser, but that is not why I was fired. Being an organiser is a role that I have fulfilled benefiting the FIA for over 12 years. This isn't new. In spite of the matter being resolved quietly and amicably, he's still upset and decided to fire me. After 15 years of volunteering, my time as a steward, a decade teaching other stewards, and hundreds of hours volunteering in other roles, I get a text from one of his assistants. He added, there was no intention of trying to cause a problem with the FIA, and I will continue as the sporting organiser of the 3 US Grand Prix. This was such a minor point that it is baffling anyone would take such offence. Yeah, and apparently, and we're going to get onto that very soon, but Vitic apparently is a very similar story too, so let's talk about that on here too. His departure comes after Janet Tan was inexplicably removed from her role as the deputy F2 race director. Maya and Tan's departure add to the list of departures from F1's governing body. Former F1 race director Niels Vitic and FIA compliance officer Paolo Bassari also left their roles recently. While in the last year the organisation has lost sporting director Tim Nielsen, technical director Tim Gross, managing director Natalie Robin, head of commission for women Deborah Meyer, secretary general of mobility Jacob Bangsgaard, and Director of Communications Luke Skipper. Vitic has gone on record of saying as well that he did not leave voluntarily, that he was sacked, and that's despite the FIA saying that he left voluntarily. Maya is alarmed by Tan's departure as she's seen as being taken over from Rui Marquez, who replaced Vitic as the FIA's F1 race director. It means Marquez will now oversee both F1 and F2 this week at the Qatar Grand Prix and next week's race in Abu Dhabi, as well as Formula One Academy. Maya said she, Tan, is the epitome of the type of person we want working for the FIA, the best of the next generations of race directors. I don't know the circumstances, but one would think they would work very hard to keep someone of her character. I know how hard both of these jobs are. I like Rui a lot, but it will put him under incredible pressure. There aren't a lot of platinum level FIA race directors, which is the FIA's highest level of certification. I'm one of them. It's a lot of work, and if you want to do the job right, you wake up every day with also thinking of all the various things you need to be thinking about. They're not doing themselves any favours, they are literally running out of people to do these jobs. Autosport also contacted the FIA for comments, and I would be shocked if they receive some sort of reply. This article's now over a day old, so I don't think they're going to get a reply. Just like how the GPDA have not received a reply from the FIA yet either over their letter that they sent over to them. Which, again, it's just adding to the load of rubbish that's going on, really. This one kind of goes over the same thing from Jonathan Noble here on the Autosport, just going over how the F2 and F1 Academy race director will now take charge of F1 as well, which is just terrible, really. A real surprise. Yeah, it's really, really terrible. And this one, the Times here, this is probably the worst of the lot, right? So I'm not going to go through Jonathan Noble's article on the Autosport. You know, I think Ben Hunt's kind of covers a lot of the same things. This, though, from the Times, yeah. Let's have a look at this. This is quite bad as well. So, top duo removed from office after querying FIA's president's plans for funds. Committee members expressed concerns over $1.5 million fund set up at the suggestion of Mohamed bin Sulayem for international motoring clubs. Who will vote when the president receives re-election? The F1 governing body has ended the service of 2 members of the committee that it scrutinises its finances after they expressed concerns about a $1.5 million, just over £1.1 million fund set up at the suggestion of the President Mohamed bin Sulayem. At a meeting at the four-person audit committee for the FIA, questions were asked over whether it would be appropriate for bin Sulayem to suggest offering $1.5 million to international motoring clubs who will vote when the president seeks re-election in 2025. Now, do I really need to spell this out, guys? Do I really need to spell out why that should, at the very minimum, be questioned? Because you are lining the pot. It could be argued, and I'm not alleging this, but it could be argued that that is lining the pockets of the people that are voting for you. That is buying votes, allegedly. I don't need to spell it out, do I? That is really bad. I mean, you get people in elections funding political parties, right? That's, private citizens doing what they want with the money. You want to go support a political party and make a donation, go for it. That's your money. That's your right in a free country. There's nothing wrong with that. But directly funding the people that vote for you, yeah, not good. Not good. Bertrand Badre, the chairman of the committee, and Tom Purvis were terminated last summer, 3 days ago. 3 days after Badre raised the issue. Badre, a former managing director of the World Bank, and Purvis, the former chief executive of Rolls-Royce and BMW, had been working for the FIA on a pro bono basis. Again, volunteers, just like the stewards are. The revelation comes amid concerns over transparency at the FIA raised by drivers and teams in F1 this season. The drivers have been fined for swearing over team radio, and George Russell said before the Las Vegas Grand Prix that drivers were a bit fed up because they were yet to receive a response to questions about how the money was being spent. That's the letter I told you about before. Similar concerns have been raised about the $1 million fines paid by Alpine and Honda for procedural breaches of the cost cap. Badre and Purvis are amongst a slew of staff who have left the FIA during his time as president. This week, Yannick Tan, we've already covered that. That's in the other article as well. Here's a quote as well. Just when we've asked for, let's just say, a bit of transparency and consistency, we are getting rid of two highly important people in the governing body, Russell said. We still don't have any reason for Niels Wittich, the former race director's removal. I don't think anybody was informed about Tim Meyer leaving the same. The first I heard about the new race director doing Formula 2 this weekend as well was through the media. We'd love to get a little bit of clarity and understanding of what's going on and who's getting fired next. He's expecting there to be more. And to be fair, if you were a betting man, you would probably wager there would be. The lack of clarity and transparency has been a recurrent issue for the drivers. The Audit Committee examines the accounts of the FIA and is charged with assessing any risks facing the organisation which have financial implications. In February, the committee received information from the Finance Department that asked questions about the funds allocated for the President's expenses and the absence of receipts. The man is not putting in receipts for his expenses. Dodgy. The President's Expense Fund is referred to by FIA lawyers as his entitlement. Dodgy. A later email to international motoring clubs suggests that the entitlement was $1.5 million. The Finance Committee was led to believe that bin Sulayem was intending to spend a proportion of that entitlement on the maintenance of his private jet. Even more dodgy. In the FIA statutes and regulations, there is no record of how the president's entitlement should be administered or whether it can or cannot be spent on a private jet maintenance, but I bet you Max Mosley and Jean Todt did not do that. The president is unsalaried. The FIA has not disclosed how much of bin Sulayem's entitlement was spent in his 2 years of office. The FIA is based in Paris and French law requires expenses to be receipted. The Times understands that when bin Sulayem was asked for receipts, he decided to end all use of his entitlement and henceforward pay his expenses out of his own pocket. The last meeting of the Audit Committee with Badre as chairman was on the 3rd of June. Before the meeting, the committee was informed about the president's suggestion that the $1.5 million fund might be able to be directed instead to a fund for motoring clubs worldwide. Questions were raised at the Audit Committee over whether the use of the $1.5 million was appropriate because it was going to clubs around the world, who would have a vote when the president sought re-election at the end of 2025. As the chairman, Badre was due to present to the FIA General Assembly in Samarkand in Uzbekistan on the 13th of June. Why are they meeting in Uzbek? He was told not to travel but then join over Zoom instead. At the General Assembly, bin Sulayem formally announced the creation of the new President's Development Fund. On his Zoom call, Badre relayed the Audit Committee's feedback. On the 16th of June, the Senate members received communications from Camilo Sanz de Barros, the Senate president, asking for an e-vote on whether to end the service of Badri and Purvis. The vote was carried. In an email to the Senate, Purvis has described this as a sad day for the FIA. Badri and Purvis asked the Senate for an independent review and the opportunity to explain their position. They received no reply. The RAC club, of which the Purvis has been the chairman of, is one of the members of the FIA. The RAC also wrote to the FIA asking why the services of Purvis has been dispensed and received no reply. The Times has seen the email sent to the subsequent Purvis to the Senate members asking why the President of the Senate would ask for the dismissal of half the audit committee, including the chairman, if there is nothing untoward or nothing to hide. And why would the President of the Senate and the President of the FIA seek dismissal despite the proposal to have an independent investigation? What is there to hide? On the 4th of August, an FIA email was sent to international motoring clubs in which Ben Sulayem informed them that in Samarkand, I announced this new initiative and that reallocating funds that would have been used in the President's expenses, there was a new $1.5 million funds called the President's Development Fund. That was aimed at supporting small and medium-sized clubs. It's understood that the initiative would be supported by external advisors, including government representatives. The issue of transparency at the FIA has been a subject that the drivers have been raising recently. 4 weeks ago, before the Brazilian Grand Prix, the Grand Prix Drivers Association released a statement that said, for the past 3 years, we've called upon the FIA. I mean, you've already heard this, right? I think you guys have already heard this. If not, look it up. It's basically saying that, you know, we're adults, we can wear what we want, we can say what we want, we don't need the FIA to interfere in this. It's just unnecessary, and the FIA has still not responded. And I realise this is a really long video. I did not expect it to be this long, to be honest. But that just kind of summarises what's going on here. There is a serious lack of transparency in the FIA. It's been, I mean, this is just going to be my opinion, guys, and you can disagree with my opinion if you want, but I just want to make sure this is my opinion. This is not necessarily the opinion of the F1 Chronicle before anybody says it, but my opinion is that right now it's just being run like a dictatorship. You know, what MBS says goes, and anybody who questions MBS gets disappeared, gets fired without explanation. You know, he has, I mean, we can get into some of the conspiracy theories around some of his rules, which I'm not going to do here because I don't have time for it. And you guys have, you know, if you guys are still listening to this, thank you, seriously. But what I would say on top of all this is that he's doing things like the swear punishments and stuff like that just unnecessary. There's nothing wrong. Right, there's nothing wrong inherently by wanting to support motoring clubs, right? I don't know the finances of them. I don't know if they're struggling. I don't know if they need that money or not. I don't know, right? The FIA should, of course, but let's just say they need the money, right? There's nothing wrong inherently by doing that. But when that money is then being used to go to these places and give them money, which is an opportunity that no one else can do, because the only person that can do that is the FIA president, and MBS therefore has an unfair advantage over its competition, because for them to do the same thing, which I don't think would be right, but anybody who runs against him, they would have to do it out of their own pocket. They don't have these FIA funds, and they're not wanting to disclose his receipts for his expenses. I mean, remember the MP expenses scandal back in the day in the UK, guys? You know, that was all on the books. This is off the books. This is black operations here. You know, this is some secret stuff going on here. Like, what are you trying to hide? And people are just getting sacked left, right, and centre without any explanation. And like the quote in the BBC, from the BBC, and the one that was in the Autosport article, you know, there's going to be nobody left. There's going to be nobody left to run the races. And then maybe that's what he wants. Maybe he wants to be the race director. I have no idea. I really can't understand what's going on. The FIA right now, it's got itself in a real crisis when Formula 1, I know Formula 1 is not the FIA's only thing. They also govern other motorsport series in Europe, F2, F3, World Rally Championship, you know, they do all that stuff. But F1 is the cash cow. F1 is the big thing, and F1 is massive right now. And the FIA should be riding the crest of a wave. And MBS is just going about his job really poorly. You know, say what you want about Max Mosley and Sean Todt, right? Say what you want about them. But for the most part, and I've said this numerous times, they were seen but not heard. They were a leader behind the scenes. MBS is the opposite. Behind the scenes, the guy is a tyrant. He's a dictator. In front of the cameras, he's just wanting to show off and stamp his authority over the sport. He wants it to be his. He's not doing the right thing. I mean, it's mad and sad to me that he will probably get re-election and run unopposed in 25. Which I just think is bonkers, because like, how is there nobody else that is willing to stick their neck out and be the president? Because this guy is so unpopular. But of course, he's probably impressing the right people to get him back into power, like the automotive clubs. Maybe nobody sees any point in it because the guy has so much control. It's a bit depressing, to say the least. But yeah, big video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed reading through it. I apologize if I made some mistakes in there and stuff, but you could see the articles, and there's a lot of text in there, and I had to get through it. So let us know your comments and your thoughts in the comments below, guys. Should MBS go? Should he go? Simple question. He won't go, but should he go? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And of course, keep it subscribed to the F1Chronicle.com for much more news and analysis on everything to do with the pinnacle motor sport right here.